All right, welcome back once again, everybody. I'm Don Seifrit. It's the Dr. Treeford and Don podcast. It's Monday, June 26th. I'm here with Dr. Greg Krawczyk. Say hi, Greg.
Hello, everyone.
And Dr. Kari Peter. Say hi, Kari.
Hello. Happy last week of June.
I flipped it up a little bit. Normally I say Kari first, but since Dr. Krawczyk, we agreed that he can give his update first. I figured I'd start with him. And Greg, I'll let you get to it.
Okay, thank you, Don. It's kind of interesting moment this week. According to models, we are completely done with the Codling-MOV flight, third generation flight. But I checked this morning, NUA actually is already telling us that we already started the second generation flight. Also, we are during the flight of the second generation Oriental Fruit MOV. And depends if you switch the newer dates for the biofix, you might be either a 10% egg hatch or you might be on the peak hatch of the eggs for Oriental Fruit MOV. One way or another, this is another example, and I think we need to talk about this thing much more during the winter meetings, how important and how having traps in your orchard is the only reliable way to assess insect pest, timing, population, the need for the spray, and so on. Saying this, we still catching a lot of Codling-MOV, which we believe are still the first generation flight, which means that if they are flying and they can find a trap, males can also find a female, they can still mate, and females still can lay eggs. For Oriental Fruit MOV, yes, we are in the second generation, but based on the past, this is the generation that actually caused the least problems if it was controlled correctly during the first generation. And to assess this, this is a perfect time to go to your peach orchard and just look for the flagging tops of the shoots. If you see a lot of flagging, it means that the second generation OFM will be strong. And those moths flying now, they actually will have larvae in your fruit, stone fruit, in the next 4-6 weeks, which is basically the peak peach season. So if you see flagging, you have to be very aggressive with controlling OFM. If you don't see flagging, then probably you did a great job during the first generation flight, and now keep monitoring and then respond if you have to, but you don't really need those, preventive spray because you are in the trouble. Codling-MOV, on the other hand, you can see the injuries of fruit. But again, if you don't see them in the traps, the next time you can do anything about Codling-MOV will be the second part of July, which is basically July 15th, 20th, when the second generation normally is supposed to be active. It's a big thing about this right now because the flight of Codling-MOV changed in the last probably 10 years, becoming much more extended for the first generation flight, and consequently also during the second generation. So it's very difficult, if someone did the first cover, second cover sprays and told that you're done with Codling-MOV, that's not the case. But again, this is the time to assess, go to your orchard, look at the fruit, look at the hottest spots from the past, and you know this in your orchard. If you see any injured fruit, and this will give you the best assessment of what needs to be done later on. So this is something from the past. What is happening right now, because of the rain we are receiving, this is also the time when Japanese beetle is really coming out from the ground. The rain makes the soil soft, and then it really helps Japanese beetle to complete their development in the soil and getting out. I have already seen Japanese beetle in the orchard. they are feeding. Japanese beetle is the same like brown marmorated stinkbug. Certain areas might be heavily infested, and half mile away, you might not see any. But when they start coming out right now, they will be in the field until end of August. And if they are something that is very attractive to them, and stone fruit, plums, grapes, honeycrisp, if there is an issue, you really have to monitor and then respond what is needed. When I'm talking respond to Japanese beetle, basically any neonicotinoid, pyrethroid. I don't want you to use pyrethroid because of the potential mite issue, but neonicotinoid should work well. And if you suspect of any potential issue with the brown marmorated stinkbug, then high rate of neonicotinoids. We're talking Asail, we're talking Eniprobado, we're talking Actara. Actara has 35 days PHI on apple, so this has to be careful, especially on your, the cultivars that are maturing in mid-August, not too many of them, but remember about it. But anyway, any neonicotinoid at full rate should help very effectively against the Japanese beetle. It should eliminate any potential nymphal feeding from brown marmorated stinkbug, and also will take care of aphids. Unfortunately, none of them is really effective against woolly apple aphid, and I keep seeing more and more woolly apple aphid infestation in the orchards right now. I did not see orchard that is heavily infested, but the issue with woolly apple aphid is we have only 2 registered products to control woolly apple aphids. Some other will tell you suppression, but we were never really successful with it. The 2 products to control woolies are either Movento or diazinon. Movento is systemic. It will work at the lower pressure of woolly apple aphid, basically preventing them from establishing and becoming big problem if the biological control doesn't work. Diazinon, on the other hand, is a rescue treatment, but we have only 1 application of diazinon per season. I mean, on the label there are 2, but only 1 during the vegetational period. You can use diazinon on the dormant, but you cannot use 2 diazinons during the season. So this is something important to remember. So what I would say right now, if you see woolly apple aphids, and they are very easy to spot, they are very, very easy to spot in the orchard, this is the time to use Moventa, and then keep monitoring and keep diazinon if needed for late July, even August, if woolly apple aphids will completely get out of control. This is something that there's no other tool that Movento will fail under heavy pressure applied later in the season. Right now, it will work. It will not work later on. I mentioned mites. The weather we have is kind of, good and bad for mites. If you had problems with the mites before, it's time to look for them. If you see them, maybe acaricide, using right now acaricide will stop them from developing. We still have July and August, our hottest months, and that's the weather that mites love. And they will actually develop if they are on the trees right now. So this is the time to check for mites. You can see them running usually on the underside of the leaves. And if needed, acaricide might be used. For those of you that are dealing with the persilla, with the producing pears, again, this is time to assess how your early season program worked. I see still people using surround, and I guess people have the way to deal with it. I personally don't like surround at this time of the year, but if that's what you choose, you can still go with surround. It will desiccate the nymphs that are actually surrounding by these honeydew droplets, and it will work. but you have to be aware that the residue that you will create on that fruit right now might be difficult to clean before the harvest. Therefore, unless you have a good washing system for your fruit, be prepared that you will have this residue on the fruit that people might ask, and it's very difficult to explain to people, oh yeah, I'm spraying. And for people, it's automatically, oh yeah, spraying pesticides. But you cannot explain that, oh yeah, I'm spraying Surround, and Surround is really only a clay, kaolin clay dust. So this is something to think about. If you don't gonna use Surround, there's a whole bunch of products that should help you right now. Transform, you can use Delegate, you can use Exirel, any neonicotinoids. Again, everything depends what you're trying to control. None of those products will control everything. If you are in the situation when you have eggs, young nymphs, old nymphs, and adults at the same time, you are into the hard battle, basically spraying every week for the rest of the season, because none of the products can kill everything. And one of the stages will be left, and then, they will basically causing problems. So those are the most important updates for the moment. Again, summarizing, this is the time to assess how well your OFM work. It's almost the time to assess how well your codling moth program worked. This is the time to be again in the orchard to assess what to expect for the future with monitoring for woolly apple aphids and monitoring for mites. And then July used to be a month that I said, well, we can go on vacation because there is nothing happening. It's no any longer. Or May, if you did a great job at the beginning of the season. But that's all. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. We were doing some sprayer calibrations last week and had some questions about oriental fruit moth catch and trapping. So I'm glad you went over it.
What questions? Maybe I can answer.
Oh, just he was a little concerned that his traps weren't working because he wasn't catching anything. But as you said, you think we're in between the two generations.
Last week, between the generation. I mean, it depends from the location. The southern PA is ahead than the northern PA. And again, there might simply be no pressure. With oriental fruit moth, we have this huge flight during the third generation. And then if your petal fall and the first cover sprays and the curculio sprays, all of this is hammering oriental fruit moth. So basically, we should not get to the levels we were catching early in the season until August, September, when those numbers will again increase drastically. Right now, we are in this very low numbers and so on, if we were effective during the third generation flight.
Dr. Peter.
Okay, well, the rain has returned and so has the threat for disease. So we kind of had a significant lull there up until about, 2 weeks ago, I think, when the rain returned. So there's a lot to be thinking about right now. So let's, as far as an order of, I guess, importance, fruit rots, namely bitter rot. So let's talk about bitter rot for a few minutes. So I talked about it in the last podcast. So this will be a healthy review, and what is it? Repetition is the mother of learning. So as far as bitter rot goes, what our research has shown us is that the spores are available all season long, but they only are a threat when you have the infection conditions present. And when the infection conditions are present, you've got warm, wet weather, and wet weather meaning at least about 12 hours of leaf wetness. And we're getting that right now. It is warm, it's humid, it's muggy out. We're in between rain showers. It seems we're getting some kind of rain just about every day, depending on where you're located. So we are in prime infection conditions. So hopefully folks have been on alert for this, and they've gotten their fungicides on prior to those wetting events, and they've been monitoring how much rain has fallen as a result of those wetting events, because you need to go and refresh said fungicide spray in order for your protection to be effective. Because remember, let's quickly review how the bitter rot fungus works. It's stealthy. So when the spore lands on the fruit, it usually gets there through rain splashing, starts to germinate, and then directly penetrates into the skin. And when it does that, it establishes itself and then goes dormant. And when it's dormant, or we call this the quiescent phase, it's not showing, it's caused infection in the fruit, but it's not showing symptoms. It's just in this stasis mode until it gets to a time later in the season when it receives a cue from the fruit to turn on again and continue its necrotrophic phase, or its phase of actually causing the visible sign of the fruit rot. At that point, it's too late to do anything. So now is a time to be having your protection on prior to that wetting event. So those spores, when they land on the fruit, they're seeing that fungicide so it can stop. Because when it goes dormant, when it causes the infection and goes dormant in the fruit, no fungicides can touch it. Or few fungicides, if any, can effectively touch it and control it. So that's what makes it so challenging, is that once you see symptoms, it's too late to really do anything. So you need to be proactive now. So as far as what to be doing right now, hopefully folks are being regular with their Captan sprays. They might have just been Captan up until recently. What you should be doing now, because of the frequent rain events and the threat of consistent rain in the forecast, even thunderstorms, there's a chance of thunderstorms, that amount of rain or that amount of wetness will be enough to trigger an infection event. So you probably want something stronger with your Captan. What is stronger? Well, depending on where you are in the pre-harvest interval, you have Aprovia, which is a FRAC group 7. It is the only FRAC group 7 that works. It has a 28-day PHI. You have Omega, which is a 28 or 29, 30-day PHI. It's about a month. That is a FRAC group 29. These are unique modes of actions. But they need to be put on because of this month pre-harvest interval. This would be the time to be using it because you're still a ways out from harvest. If you're using that FRAC 7, be mindful of how many 7s you applied during the early season for apple scab and Marsanina. Also be mindful of saving that one FRAC 7 with the FRAC 11, like Maravon, particularly for the end of the season. So you have one FRAC 7. If you use 2 FRAC 7s early in the season, you save that one FRAC 7 with the FRAC 7 and 11 for late in the season. You've got one chance of FRAC 7 right now. So this would be the time to do it. So you've got Aprovia, Omega, the 30-day PHI. Then you've got Flynn Extra, Maravon, Luna Sensation. But because of that FRAC 7 in Luna Sensation and Maravon, just be mindful. Flynn Extra is a straight FRAC 11. This will be good. You shouldn't have used any FRAC 11s, hopefully, early in the season because of everything I preached about saving them for the summer. So Flynn Extra would be excellent right now, too. You also can, if you are, say you're in an area where it's not getting as much rain, continue with Captan at the 3 pounds to the acre. For those of you who are pulling away from Captan due to fruit finish issues, or certain varieties are a little iffy with Captan that you think or have been told or have you observed, use Xyram. Xyram at a minimum of 4 pounds to the acre, and also add a spreader sticker with it too to allow it to stick on a bit better. There's also Topsin. Topsin isn't bad. It's not as strong, but it's better than nothing, especially for the rainy periods. So Topsin will help as long as Captan is mixed with it. Just be mindful of how much rain is falling in between your fungicide sprays, because some of you, from what I've heard, are getting really dumped on right now. All of a sudden, it's feast or famine with precipitation right now. So just be really mindful of basically how old that fungicide spray is, when you last sprayed, how much rain has fallen. As far as organic controls go, your options are few and far between. Sulfur is an option. However, you can encounter fruit finish issues with sulfur when it's above 80 degrees. You also can do Serenade or double nickel, but that's going to have to be applied regularly and often, because that is just on the surface. And depending on how high your disease pressure is, you may see some issues. You can throw in some regalia at 2 quarts to the acre. When we have tested regalia in the field, so let me back up. Regalia is one of its modes of actions as thickens plant cell walls. When we've tested in the field, our results have been inconclusive as far as the efficacy. But what I suspect is in some cases that we're seeing a slight bump in basically conventionals, being a little more oomph with conventionals. And I would suspect even with your organic products too, a little more oomph. By itself, it's very poor. So don't rely on it by itself. It's more of an additive, perhaps during these periods where we're seeing frequent rain events, and you just, maybe give the fungus, making the fungus work a little extra harder to cause infection, but it's not causing infection effectively. So that's basically the broad brushstrokes for bitter rot. The take-home messages are, please put on your fungicide sprays prior to the wetting event. If you wait after, you're sunk, because this is where people get caught. I've lost count how many times I've heard, I put on fungicide sprays, I followed your regime, and then I asked them, did you put on the fungicide sprays after the rain? They're like, oh, well, maybe. Well, this is where you're getting caught. Fungicide sprays really, in this case, are only as good as when you apply them. And you need to have them on the fruit prior to that fungal spore causing that, direct penetration into the skin. So because this is a tough fungus, it's, it's everywhere. And so it's a real challenge to stay ahead of it. So this is a good segue into sooty blotch fly speck. We are very much in a good sooty blotch fly speck weather. It was dry, and so the early season probably not much happened, but we're probably getting it pretty good now. But whatever you're doing for fruit rots is controlling for sooty blotch fly speck. So Captan sprays, tops, and any of the fungicides I mentioned for bitter rot, this will all work against sooty blotch fly speck. And as far as other fruit rots go, let's talk about brown rot. We are getting close to the pre-harvest interval for pre-harvest fungicide interval for brown rot on peaches. And well, as I see the weather, we'll see how this season goes with brown rot. If the weather continues the way it is, this might be a tough brown rot year, in contrast, perhaps like the last couple of years where brown rot really wasn't an issue. So make sure you are mindful of those your pre-harvest brown rot intervals. The rule of thumb, the most effective pre-harvest fungicide spray to minimize brown rot is about 18 to 21 days pre-harvest, but say 9 to 11 days pre-harvest and 1 to 3 days pre-harvest. So there's like three good fungicide sprays depending on when you are harvesting. For the early harvesting ones, you may only need 2 sprays. For the later, you may need a solid 3. Rotate your fungicide chemistries, your FRAC group numbers. There's a lot you can choose from. You have everything from tops in a FRAC group 1, the FRAC group 3s like Sevia and Indar, FRAC group 7, which is Lodes, Lunisensation, Maravon, Flin Extra, and FRAC group 11s, again, Maravon, Lunisensation, Flin Extra. And that's just a couple of them, Inspire Super, Vanguard. I mean, there's a lot you can choose from. You aren't at a loss. The goal is to get it on soon enough and to rotate your chemistries. And so just be watchful of the weather conditions out there. We went from like getting a ½ inch of rain in 6 weeks to now getting a month's rain in a week. So kind of crazy times right now. So moving on to bacterial diseases like backspot. Well, we're in backspot weather. We're in probably the tail end of like really bacterial spot control, but still keep up on it. But one thing I just want to have folks be mindful of is the use of copper right now. This is nice, good conditions for copper injury in the sense of slow drying conditions. Remember, copper, it's a general biocide. It's going to kill bacteria. It's going to kill fungi. It's going to kill plant cells. And the type of copper you're using are fixed coppers, where the copper ions are adhered to the particle and they slowly release when they're wet. So if you have constant wetting, you're getting all your copper ions released all at once, and you have all that a greater chance of causing death of some cell, whether it's bacterial, fungal, or plant cell. So just be careful about using the amount of copper you're using right now on your peach trees, because peach leaves are pretty sensitive to copper injury. Some cultivars are more sensitive than others. Your other options are the oxytetracycline is good right now, but that is only labeled for peaches and nectarines. It's not labeled for plums or apricots or the other different stone fruits like apriums or pluots. You've got the serenades and serenade and double nickel. Those are good rotation partners. Regalia. These are good rotation partners. So something to sort of let off the gas of the copper because of the risk of copper injury right now, because that is the big concern. The more wet it is, the more injury the copper will cause, and more premature defoliation you might see. A little defoliation is okay. It tells you the copper is working. You know, a peach tree can withstand some defoliation from copper, so don't freak out about that. But it's extreme defoliation when it looks like the trees are Christmas trees and all you see are the little fruits hanging off. That's bad. That's not good. So just be mindful about that. Just another quick reminder about hail damage. Remember, if there's any kind of hail event, because there are a lot, like right now we're under a thunderstorm warning. And I know in the far eastern part of the state, there potentially high wind gusts also. So anything that could cause damage to the fruit trees, whether it's hail or high wind, you want to go out there with a streptomycin spray. This is the only time you're really allowed to use a streptomycin spray during the summer season, is when there's damage. And so that will stave off any trauma blight caused by the fire blight bacteria. So just be mindful of that. If you've been good and then all of a sudden you see your fruit has a lot of pock marks in it, you want to be spraying with Captain or sulfur for the remainder of the season. That is, if you, I got a phone call over the last week asking me about what to do about some trees, some apple trees, because their crop insurance adjuster told them the damage was so severe they needed to drop all their fruit. So what should they do? So I basically said, still use sulfur or Captan. I mean, even if you have no fruit, there's still disease out there. You don't want the buildup. You want things to, you want to still keep that pathogen load down.
Because of what you just said, Kari, about the injured fruit and so on, injured fruit are extra attractive to codling moth and oriental fruit moth. And if they are left uncontrolled, but the fruit are still on the trees, this might be a disastrous situation next season. So it's a tough decision, because we're talking about spraying when the fruit are not on the trees and there will be any income coming. But if we do nothing, they are very, very attractive to OFM and codling moth.
Oh, that is a good point.
Sorry for break.
No, I'm glad you said that. So, because sometimes folks think, oh, I got hail injury, I can just walk away. No, actually, it's like you still have to maintain the same level of vigilance as you would if your fruit was going to fresh market. So folks, just be mindful of hail events, that you still can't let your foot off the gas pedal. You still need to be controlling for insects and diseases. And the last thing I just want to mention is about soil-borne diseases. Oh, these are a thorn in my side right now. Because of how wet and warm it is, there is some issues across the state that we're seeing, particularly in Adams County. Southern blight, for instance, is a soil-borne disease that is killing trees. And I think 2018 is when we got twice the amount of rainfalls, when everything kicked off. And it basically, southern blight hasn't gone down. It's back down its hole. It's still up. It's still up in basically the root zone area. And so there are no labeled controls, legally labeled controls for southern blight. So, and There are some things that I do recommend, but I will recommend them to folks who contact me, because some things are, basically we're doing things to salvage a young block. But as far as legal applications, there are no fungicides that are legally labeled to control southern blight on apple in the soil. We're working on that this year. Hopefully we will have something by the end of this season for growers for next year. But if you do have a southern blight problem, please contact me, and I will walk you through the process as far as what attempts that can be made to salvage the situation. If it gets really rainy, if this turns out to be like a 2018 year where it was dry, then all of a sudden it started raining and didn't stop raining, people should be thinking about being proactive about Phytophthora or Pythium or other soil-borne sprays. So using products, the phosphorus acids or the phosphonates, your prophytes, your ramparts. I know there's other ones out there that are similar. There's quite a few of these phosphorus acid or those phosphonates. I would recommend throwing these in your tank, depending on where you're at, especially for those areas. If you're under a flood warning, if your ground is saturated based on how much rain you've gotten recently, this is something to be mindful of, or going into the future in the next few weeks, depending on how the weather shakes out. Being proactive. As far as these phosphonates go, circling back to bitter rot, there some work down in the South, like in North Carolina, has shown that, Prophyte, products like Prophyte or something similar does seem to help with bitter rot. Again, because of the seasons we've had the last few years, it's kind of been inconclusive for me. What I have observed is that perhaps maybe it pushes off some post-harvest bitter rot incidents, but maybe this will be the year where I will actually be able to determine sort of the addition of Prophyte or a similar product in with Captan, essentially, to see if it can hold off bitter rot. But right now in Pennsylvania, I would say the jury's still out, but down in North Carolina, where a lot of that research was done, they believe in it down there. And so they do incorporate it. So that is another option. And, that's legal on apples, because this is an interesting type of fungicide. It's a true systemic, so it's going all the way down into the roots. So this, you can get sort of a couple bangs for your buck for this product spray, foliar spray, because it will go down into the roots, and then it can also help your fruit as well. But it's the only, as far as an apple, the only fungicide group that truly does that as far as it goes down into the roots. So, Don, did I miss anything?
No, that was the major stuff. I'm glad you covered a bunch of the leaf wetness hours that we're getting out east here.
Yeah, that I can't emphasize that enough, folks. We are this is all hands on deck now. I mean, it seems that, it seems like we're getting some kind of rain shower every day, and it's humid, and so it's stuff staying wet. So, and you've got your microclimate and stuff in the trees. So it's something
before you had gotten on, Greg and I had talked briefly about Berks County specifically, because that's what I get weather updates for, is under flood watch today. So, see where it goes, as always. So yeah, thank you guys for coming on here this morning and giving the update, and I'll try and get this ready to roll pretty soon. Have a good one, everybody. Say goodbye.
See ya.
Hey everybody, editing/recording Don here from the future. I have Dr. Daniel Weber on to talk about the virtual meetups. So that is currently what's happening. Say hi, Daniel.
Hello there.
So this is your first time actually on the podcast, even though it's kind of as a little separate thing. So for folks who don't know you, give a brief introduction of yourself.
Sure. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Daniel Weber. I am an extension educator, just like Don is, and I am based out of the Adams County office in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Most of my region covers the southern central areas of Pennsylvania, but as Don knows, and you probably know if you're a longtime listener to this, we do get around. So yes, this is my first time here, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem. But you're here to talk about the virtual meetups. So for folks who don't know what that is, if you could give them kind of a rundown of what to expect, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, no problem. The virtual meetup started in 2021. It was an outgrowth of the Root to Shoot program. Many of you were aware of this. It was a nationwide project that investigated issues concerned with honeycrisp management and how to control some of the serious problems that honeycrisp has. And so at the conclusion of this multi-year project, they offered a series of webinars called Root to Shoot. And it was held over the summer and about once a week or once every 2 weeks. I don't remember at this point. They had people who were involved in that research give short presentations about what they had discovered and then offered practical advice on how to approach honeycrisp management. And one of the nice things about this is it also featured growers who are actually involved in the research that gave their input on what they were observing. So one of the leaders of that, Dr. Mario Sazzo, who's from Cornell, I believe he's a doctor. I think he finally got his PhD. If not, then I just once again confirmed a doctorate on him. I did that about a year ago. So anyway, now he's got 2 PhDs. Back to the actual thing that really matters, though, is he decided that attendance to this and the reception of it was so good that we should consider making it a annual event in the midsummer when people are kind of in between the early season work in the orchard versus when harvest starts to kick in. We'd have a few little webinars on subjects that we felt were of importance to growers in the area. So in 2022, we covered the dual aspects of orchard efficiency of advanced technologies for assisting growers and also labor issues, some of the problems of acquiring labor and managing them. We also expanded to be international by including Ontario. So the 2023 meetups are on the subject of managing the unmanageable, and we have identified 3 topics there: cold, heat, and water, that generally people have problems with throughout the year. So the previous one that we just did on June 15th was about cold, extreme cold temperatures, late season warming trends, early season warming trends, late season frosts, everything having to do with cold. And a recording of that will be made available online shortly. So at the next meetup, we'll discuss that. The one that's coming up is about water relations. And it's going to be about how to manage water in the orchard, how trees deal with water uptake, especially under stressful conditions. And then we have another one coming up on July 14th on heat. So the one that is coming up on the 29th, like I said, is about water. And well, let's talk a little bit about it, I guess.
So you've laid out what previous virtual meetups kind of look like. How much time is there for folks to like get in there and ask questions with these specialists and educators and researchers that you're bringing in from all across the nation and internationally, I guess?
Yeah, one of the things that's what we try to really emphasize in the virtual meetups is the fact that it is a meeting. It's not a webinar. It's not one-way communication. So the format of this is we have 2 specialists that give about a 15-minute presentation on the topic. And as I said, this week's coming up on Thursday evening is on water. Once the specialists have concluded, we open up the lines for Q&A. So if anybody in the audience has any questions or has something specific that they would like to contribute to what the specialists discussed, they're welcome to do so. Then we transition into our grower panels. So we have grower panels that have participated in these, and they're from all over the country. And they basically will be asked a series of questions. We'll kind of guide a conversation. It's not so much Steve, let's ask you this question. It's more, okay, so here's an issue that we've noticed happening on the East Coast. Does anybody from the East Coast want to talk about this? And what about the folks from the West Coast? What are you seeing? How are you handling this? Do you encounter these problems at all? That sort of thing. And so it's an open conversation. And at any time during that, anybody who's listening in is able to actually contribute to the discussion. So if you're a grower and you're over in, I don't know, Berks County, for say, and you've got a question, you raise your hand and your microphone is enabled. You can go ahead and ask the question of the panelists or the specialists who stick around and also engage in the discussion. And we look at it as a way of just basically holding a large international conversation about the topic at hand.
That's really awesome. I think a lot of the times when folks, get these emails or notifications for things that are web-based, are Zoom-based, I think the assumption is that, okay, well, someone's going to talk at me for 35, 45, an hour long length of time. And then I'll click the end meeting button, and then I'll go about my day. So that's really cool that they get a significant amount of time to kind of go back and forth with folks.
Yeah, the meetings run from 7 o'clock Eastern in the evening, so 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time through 8:30. But I can tell you that the meetings have always run long. And you can disappear at any time. So if you've got to be someplace, there's nothing says that you need to stick around till 8:45 or whenever we actually finish the conversation. But if you're interested and you got things you want to discuss or ask, you're welcome to stick around, and, we'll just keep it going as long as we can. I will also say that the specialists, they will give 15-minute presentations. And the reason we stick it to 15 is we want them to hit the crux of the matter. We want them to talk about very specific things, what is going to be most important for a grower. Now, obviously, they've done decades of research on their subjects, so they've got a lot to say, but we're trying to make sure that the focus remains on what are the things that are going to have most direct impact to growers in these meetups. So, the talks, they will be technical at first, but everything they say is to try to communicate information that's going to be useful to a grower immediately.
So if I am a grower and I want a specific topic to be brought up for the future, how do I go about saying, hey, could you guys do a virtual meetup about, I don't know, lepidopterans?
Yeah, anybody who's got an idea can simply email me. I am on the committee that puts this together, and I am one of the hosts. I actually hosted the last one by interacting with the speakers and the growers and did the Q&A. I'll be in the background for this one, but every year, roughly around November, December timeframe, we start soliciting major themes. And we get the input directly from growers. What are we seeing? What are the growers experiencing? What have we heard? People saying, hey, I need information on X, Y, or Z. And that helps us set up these meetings. This past year, around December, we started realizing that the season was behaving very strangely. We had leaves still on the trees in December, at least in our area. People were seeing similar things around the country. And after talking with a bunch of growers, we decided that this year we're going to talk about environmental concerns. So if you've got something, if you want to, talk about insects, insect control, lepidopterans, whatever you want to talk about, go ahead and suggest it to us. And we'll go ahead and put together a theme for 2024. And if you think that you would like to be a panelist, you can even say, hey, I've got a lot of experience with this, or I assisted Dr. Krawczyk with some research, and I'd like to let you know how that went. We'd be happy to have you as a panelist. We're always looking for panelists.
Cool. And then I guess my final point is that you've had one previously this year.
That's correct. And so let me just go ahead and give you the schedule here.
Yeah.
On June 15th, our first meetup was on cold. The one on June 29th at 7 o'clock is going to be on water, and it features two speakers. The first one is Dr. Alan Laxo. Many of you would recognize that name from Mid-Atlantic or other regional conferences and conventions. He's a professor emeritus from Cornell in horticulture, and he has done a lot of research on dealing with water relations in plants. And so we're really looking forward to what he has to say. Also featured will be Dr. Kristen Hannum, and she works for Agriculture and Agri-Foods Canada over in Summerland, British Columbia. And she has done a lot of research as well on examining water, carbon, and nutrient dynamics. And so we're looking forward to hearing what she has to say about practical water management tips. I should also point out that our panelists this year feature Steve Freecon. And so many of you know Steve at Freecon Farms in Boyertown. He's going to be a panelist on our water virtual meetup coming up here. We also have panelists Steve Brown from British Columbia, Kyle Rash from Michigan, Tom Ferry from Ontario, Randy Hart from New York, and Garrett Henry from Washington. So you can see that we've got quite a range of people from all across the continent that are participating, and as we've done some prep work and pre-interviews with them, I can guarantee you they have a lot of interesting things to say.
That's really cool. And then I know we talked about just briefly touching on this next one, but if folks listen to this maybe later this week, they don't catch it quite as I get this edited. There will be one more virtual meetup. Is that right?
That is correct. That'll be on July 14th at the same time, 7 o'clock to 8:30 p.m. And we're going to be dealing with heat stress. So we've covered the cold. Now we're going to cover the water and then cover the heat. So we should be right in the middle of some of that in July, I would imagine. Time again is 7 o'clock to 8:30 p.m. And I suppose you're probably wondering how do you actually attend one of these? It is a Zoom meeting, so you do need to go to a website.
If you give me the link, I will put it in the episode description.
Okay, yeah, well, it's pretty straightforward. It's a bit.ly link, bit.ly, and it's 2023-virtual-meetup. It's as simple as that. Don will put it in there, but it's pretty easy to join. The recordings that we're making available, we don't have a specific spot for them at the moment. In fact, what we're doing is every single one of the participating institutions will have their own copies that will be made available. So you'll be able to get to it through Penn State's Kaltura. We'll advertise that, or you can go to YouTube where Cornell has been posting these, and you can find the previous ones that are also there. So if you go to just go to YouTube and search for virtual meetups, you'll be able to find the previous recordings.
Cool. That sounds really good. It's nice to have an archive of those sorts of things, so you can say, "Oh, let me see what else they've done in the past."
Yeah, yes, especially if you're a grower of Honeycrisp, which I would guess probably 100% of your listeners are. You can go back and hear the talks that were about root to shoot. There was a lot of really good information there. And then I don't want to diss the last year's. We talked about technological advancements that are coming along and things you should expect to see to help make your job easier, plus a discussion about how to acquire and manage good labor. So they're all worth revisiting if you've got the time.
Awesome. Well, I think with that, I think we've pretty much covered all the bases of what to expect for the virtual meetups, both this coming year and in 2024. And hopefully you guys will continue to get really good turnout and participation, and you keep doing this in perpetuity. So
yeah, yes. So we look forward to having folks that listen to this podcast there. And if you've got questions in advance you would like to submit, you can just feel free to email me. My email address is daniel.weber@psu.edu. And we'll try to work those in, but actually just save them. Join the conversation, raise your hand, and we're monitoring Q&A and have active discussions going on while the speakers are talking on via Q&A. So there's plenty of chances for you to get information to us, get your questions to us.
awesome. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Don. And thank you, Dr. Treeford, who's not here.
All right. Say goodbye to everyone.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. Hope to see you on June 29th from 7 o'clock to 8:30 for our virtual meetup on water.